I had the chance to speak with Claire Jeffreys, who's the director of the documentary feature film Garland Jeffreys, The King of In-Between, that will play at this year's KC FilmFest on Friday, April 12th at 6:45 p.m. You can get tickets right now at kcfilmfest.org. Alrighty, so I do want to thank you for talking with me today, Claire. I ask every filmmaker the same question, so I'll ask you the same thing just to get it started here in your own words. Tell me what your movie is all about.
My movie is about Garland Jeffreys, aka my husband, and I'm not a filmmaker per se. I have become one, but I started to make this movie just because I wanted more people to know about his music. And in the making of it over a period of years, I began to see the story of his, I guess, his perseverance as an artist and a person. So in a nutshell, that's what the movie is about.
Awesome. And how was it working together and collaborating with your husband as a duo on this project?
Well, frankly, I wouldn't call what we did collaborating.
Mm.
He just cooperated, might be a better word. He didn't, once in a while he would weigh in and say, "Oh, I think that scene is too long," or "I don't like what I'm saying there." But most of the time he was sort of taking a back seat to the whole process. And I think he was happy it was happening, but frankly, a little ambivalent because as an older man to look back on your entire life, it was a bit at times, I think, sort of bittersweet would be the best word for it.
Mm. And what would you say for the people that watch this film? I would say especially for young artists, young musicians, or other talent that watch this film, what would you say you hope is the main takeaway that they have in hearing about your husband's story and hearing about his career as a musician?
I think again the theme would be persistence,
Mm.
which is a bit of a cliche when you say that to artists, that you have to persist. But I think there really is no substitute for sticking to your guns, if you will, or sticking to your integrity and who you are as an artist and a person, and don't get distracted or swayed by something that you think is going to bring you more success. Because I think in the end, the most remarkable artists in our culture are those that are really idiosyncratic. They sort of were themselves come hell or high water. And there were certainly periods where by doing that, they weren't always the flavor of the month, but the longevity. I think if you want to have a long career, certainly you have to be committed to yourself. And I always remember reading something by the writer Richard Ford, and he said, anyone can be a writer if they're willing to commit themselves to a lifetime of observation.
Mm.
It was just really interesting because I thought that was a very sort of a side angle into the same thing I'm saying, which is you have to doggedly persevere. And
Mm.
that's what you have to do.
And I do wonder, I mean, as you are researching and putting together these clips and different archival elements from your husband's life, was there anything new that you learned for the first time about Jeffrey?
His name is Garland. Yeah.
Garland.
The few things that I learned that were the most sort of funny. First of all, I never knew that he had been a Jeopardy question.
Hmm.
And I came upon that by accident. I think I was Googling something else and I somehow saw his name come up and I was able to get the clip. And I think that clip is sort of a microcosm of his entire career,
Hmm.
which is, cool enough and in the culture enough to be a Jeopardy question, but none of the contestants had any idea who he was, and they just sort of stared blankly. So I thought that was pretty great. And also, uh, ever since we met, he had been telling me about his involvement with the yoga movement,
Hmm.
but there were no photographs, there were no articles, there were no people in his life that corroborated the story. And I always thought that he had exaggerated his involvement.
Hmm.
But again, through my research and looking for archive, I came across something called the Integral Yoga Institute or the
Hmm.
Integral Yoga Archives, which there was an official archivist. That was her job. Her name was Prem Anjali, and she was very generous. And she said to me, well, what are you looking for? I said, well, any photographic records or anything. So she, a few days later, came back to me and said, well, here's some of the footage I have. And she had masses of black and white footage that blew my mind. I could not believe it. There was Garland. He had a mustache. I had never seen him with a mustache. And he was going to the airport to meet Swami Satchidananda. And there he was chanting with the group. And I just thought to myself, holy cow, if anything, he underreported his involvement because he was
Hmm.
clearly very involved. So that was one of those two things where I think the most vivid examples of things that I discovered.
Well, I guess he gets to say I told you so. So
Exactly. Which he likes to do anyway.
well, he lived such a, fascinating life, and I certainly enjoyed watching this documentary. And anyone who shows up at the film festival and sees it, they can get a leg up on Jeopardy, maybe. So,
I know I watch it sometimes and I think I could be on that show. But I don't think it's nearly, I mean, it certainly doesn't look easy, but I think half of the battle is getting that
little clicky.
clicker and
Hmm.
responding immediately. I think I would be too slow on the gun there.
Yeah, well, it's a super fascinating documentary. And I want to thank you for talking with me today. And everyone should go out and see this at the KC Film Fest.
Garland Jeffreys, the king of in between.
Garland Jeffreys, not Jeffrey Garland.
Easy enough. Yeah.
All right. I
Thank
appreciate it.